Thanks, Rob. Great to see you all. I'm looking forward to the shepherd's pie as well. I mean, I have. Where are they getting the shepherds from? I don't know, but there are not as many of them now left in Hull. It seems to me that all people build their lives on people's words, don't they? Starts at a really young age. Your parents say, "Don't leave the playground," and you think, "Okay, if I'm going to be safe, I have to listen to my parents' words about that." My mum said, "If you haven't got anything nice to say, don't say anything at all." But I've got 3 sisters, so I remained silent from the age of 11 to 16. My maths teacher, Mr. Blessed, he said, "Look, you get out of a lesson what you're willing to put in." Well, I tried to put a lot of fun into his maths lessons, but he wasn't that keen that we got fun back out of it. But we all build our lives on people's words, don't we? There's some form, adults have some form of the treat others how you would like them to treat you, yeah? We'll have all heard that, and then we start building our lives on those kind of words. And then of my mum, also, another favourite of my mum's was, if your friends jumped off a cliff, would you? Well, no, I wouldn't, Mum, because that's dangerous, but they were just drinking Mad Dog 2020 in the park, so I thought that was all right. I'm not going to jump off a cliff, clearly. And then you've got Dad's sagely advice, son, never eat yellow snow. Well, thank you for that life lesson. That'll serve me for the rest of my life, won't it? But we all build our lives on people's words, whether it's parents, teachers, mentors. Things have been said, and we think, yeah, that's going to lay a foundation for my life. And Jesus himself thought that it was hugely important, and he knew about the power and the purpose of words, and particularly and significantly his own words. So I'd like to share with you a part of the Bible that Jesus, where Jesus speaks. It's in Luke. You've got that sheet in front of you, and I'm going to read it to you. But let's just have in mind that thought that we've all been shaped and molded by people's words. We know the power of words, that words can start wars, they can create peace, words can build up, words can tear down, words can produce courage, laughter, tears, hurt, hope. We know that, don't we? With power of words and the purpose of words. And listen to what Jesus says. There it is from Luke 6. He says, "Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and do not do what I say?" So immediately, what Jesus is saying is, look, if you give me this title that I am Lord, then there can't be a mismatch between my relationship with you and how you listen to me and how you regard my words. That's what he's holding up to begin with. And then he explains this more clearly with a story. He says, "As for everyone who comes to me and hears my words and puts them into practice, I will show you what they are like. They are like a man building a house who dug down deep and laid a foundation on rock. When the flood came and the torrent struck, that house was not shaken because it was well built. But the one who hears my words and does not put them into practice is like a man who built a house on the ground without a foundation. The moment the torrent struck that house, it collapsed and its destruction was complete." So Jesus here, basically, he answers the question that we're looking at. Why did Jesus give us the Bible? Why does Jesus give us his words? And Jesus says, look, I'm giving you my words so that you can build a life that lasts. So you can build a life that is secure, so that you can build a life that stands, so you can build a life that flourishes. That's what he wants. He wants to enable people to build a life that endures. And he says, look, if you're going to understand that, you're going to have to understand the differences between these two builders in this story. But before I point out two of the big differences between these builders, I want to point out to you 3 things that they have in common. And the first thing is this. Did you notice that they both have got the same plan? They have a plan, they have a dream. Their dream is to build a house. That's what the 2 builders have in common. And they don't, it's not that one as he builds his house, he's kind of got a superior blueprint. Okay, does he? He's got these plans. Both of them got the same dream, build a house. What does a house symbolize? They want security. They want stability. They want a future. When we talk about building a home or building a home for our family in a house, it's about having a secure future, isn't it? And that's what they want to do. Now, if you think about it, people don't sit down, do they? Nobody intentionally says, I want to make a mess of my life, do they? You don't wake up one day, you get out a pencil and you say, okay, this year, how can I make a car crash of my life? No. And nobody daydreams about, who in their daydreams about shipwrecking the future for themselves and their family? No. When you make a plan and when you daydream, it's about a secure, stable future for you, for your life, and for your family. And both these guys, that's what they have in common. They both build a house, and it's a symbol of I want a secure, stable life that won't be shaken. The second thing they have in common is that they both heard Jesus' words. This is really important. If you look down at that passage that's printed there in front of you, Jesus is really clear that both the builders hear his words. They both know about God's advice on life. They've both got access to God's truth. So it wasn't that one had superior blueprints to the other. You know, one of them went to the Guild of City Builders to get his blueprints, and the other one just tapped in cowboybuilders.com. It's not like that, is it? That's not a difference in the builders. No, they had the same instruction and the same instructor. Jesus clearly says that both these people heard these words of mine. They both have good instruction on how to build the good life, the life that lasts, the life that flourishes. That's what they have in common. And the third thing they have in common is that they both experience the same storm. Now, it's really important because if you were left thinking, oh, well, maybe his house just collapsed because it was a bigger storm, that's not the impression that the passage gives. That's not what Jesus is teaching. You're to imagine that these houses have been built in the same neighborhood, maybe even side by side. It's not that one has a furious storm and the one's hit by a storm in a teacup. No, they're both hit by the same storm that comes their way, the torrent struck. And none of us can escape the storms of life, can we? They come in different shapes and sizes. They come at different times and in a variety of ways. But they all come, don't they? Those storms of life come over us. And the question Jesus is trying to get us to face up to is, when those storms of life come, have the foundations that have been laid by the words that we built our lives upon, will they stand solid and fast? Or will they just collapse? When the boss is overbearing at work, will we be overwhelmed? Or has a good foundation been laid? But when the child is so unruly that it just means that life seems unbearable or unlivable, have we laid a solid foundation that will last? When there's too much month at the end of the money, have we laid a foundation that means that we can build a life that will last? And when we're under so much stress, the stress is so great that we feel that we might just break. Actually, have we laid a foundation that will last, that will stand fast? That's what Jesus is trying to get them to see. The thing that they have in common is they both have the same plans and dreams. Let's have a stable future. They both have access to the same blueprints of how to live because they've heard Jesus' teaching. And they both experience the same storms. Storms will come, they come to all of us, but the question is whether our life, our relationships, our family, whether they can weather those storms. You see, Jesus points out, often we think, I wonder if you think like this, I'm always thinking like this, the problem is the storm. The problem is the external factor that's pushing on me. It's these things outside that press on me. And Jesus is saying, no, the real issue is not the things on the outside that are pressing on you. It's the foundation below you that is the issue about whether you'll stand. You see, I know many people, in fact, lots of them have shared their stories this week, people who have had terrible storms in their life. But you know something? They've stood. They're standing firm. They're stable. They're enduring. Their life is flourishing in spite of the storm because of the foundation. So let me just move on by showing two of the differences between these builders that really will get us to the heart of why Jesus gave us the Bible and his word. And that is that they built on different foundations. That's the crux of it, isn't it? When you read it, it's plain, it's right in your face. He says, look, one built on rock, his house on rock, the other built his house on the ground on sand. Now, you don't have to be an expert builder to know that building a foundation on sand or just on the ground is not a very wise thing to do. One trip to the beach, I remember going to the beach when I was younger. I got my family and friends involved. It was a club trip from our village, so there was loads of us. We built this huge castle. It's brilliant. We were all working in different parts. And we were there so long, what eventually happened, the sea came in and washed the castle away. And of course, I was like really upset, devastated about it. And my dad just said, well, how long did you expect it to last? It's a good question, isn't it? How long do you expect it to last? It's built on sand. We don't build on sand or ground and expect any kind of permanence from that structure. But why, therefore, would you build on sand? Well, you do it at the beach and you do it as children because it's quick, it's easy, and you want to have fun. But why do people build their life on sand? Sand being on the ground, on the advice of the world outside of God's instruction and God's advice. Why would people do that? Well, here's some reasons, I think. Digging down to lay a foundation on rock is hard work. I was in the building trade. It's hard work. In fact, when we got to the stage where we had a little bit more money and things were going all right in that company, we paid people to come and do the foundations because it was the hardest work. And then we do the easier bit and reap more of the profit. But that's just the world, isn't it? But it's hard work. Whereas building on sand is a piece of cake. Put it on the ground, not building down your footings. Also, it's costly. It's really costly to dig down deep and lay solid foundations. Whereas it's much cheaper just to put something up on the ground. And time. To lay a good foundation and dig down for a deep foundation, it takes time. It's hard work. It's back-breaking. Whereas just laying a foundation on the ground doesn't take half as much time. So hard work, big cost, and a long time is why building on sand is favored rather than building on the solid rock. And building your life, when we build our life on the world's advice, what the world sees as right and wise, outside of what Jesus says in the Bible, that's easy. It's not as costly and it's quick. But building your life on Jesus' words in the Bible, it's hard work, it's costly, and it takes time, the rest of your life. Which is probably why so many people neglect Jesus' words or even mock them or don't want anything to do with them. But, no matter how much hard work it is, how costly, the time that it takes up, it's all worth it, isn't it? According to what Jesus says in this passage. Because those, as we heard a couple of days ago, invest in eternity. Those are the real winners. Look at the final contrast, and it's the end result of the two builders. This is the final contrast, the kind of where the rubber really hits the road. The house of Mr. Sandman collapsed, and the house of Mr. Rockman stood firm. It collapsed. Symbolically, it's saying his life came to a disastrous end. You see, this story that Jesus told, he's getting people to interact with the question, what are you building your life upon? What foundation are you laying for your life? Building your life on the wisdom of the world, that is, the ideas and thoughts that are out there, outside, and in contradiction and contrast to the Bible's wisdom, doesn't lay a foundation that stands secure and firm in the storms of life, and certainly for the storm at the end of life that we heard about from Rob yesterday, that final judgment. But building your life on the wisdom of Jesus and lays a foundation that is strong, secure, and weathers the storms of life and weathers the storm at the end of all of life. Jesus gave us the Bible because he wanted to prepare us for the coming storm. He wanted to prepare us for the judgment to come and for the life to come. Personally, for me, this is one of the strongest motivations for me as a Christian to live with Jesus' words and to live my life according to his words, even when it's hard and it takes time and it takes that effort. But one of the strongest motivations is I don't want my life to come crashing down around my ears. And I don't want it to come crashing down around my ears at the end of all things. You see, how often have you've just done some kind of project? Maybe I'm talking to guys, but I think it's for everybody, but you need to think about it. But I've done things and I've cut corners. I've been working on something in the garden, maybe tried to put up some kind of gazebo or something and make something, and I've cut corners. And I thought, I should have really done this and had this more support, but it'll be all right. And 2 weeks' time, you come out in the morning, it's on the floor, and you think to yourself, if I just put in a little bit more effort, it would still be standing. Or who's bought something, and you think, if I just paid a little bit more. We had to fill up a big pool we did some baptisms down at Christchurch, Newland, and I went online, and we needed this particular clip to attach to this particular tap in the school for the hose. And I thought, I won't buy the cheapest one because it'll be rubbish. I'll go middle road, but I'm not paying that extra $5 because, 20 quid for a little clip onto a tap. But when I tried to get it on the tap, I was wishing I'd paid for that multi-purpose 20 pound one. You just think sometimes if I'd have just paid that little bit extra, it would have been lasted a lot longer. And Jesus is saying, look, his words, they may be more demanding at times, more taxing in living, but it's worth it in the end. Let me share a final story just to try and get us to understand the whole idea of having a perspective, different perspectives on Jesus' words, the Bible. And let me put it like this. Imagine you're a parent and you take your children to the park. Maybe let's just say you take a young lad. Well, say Liam. Where's Liam? There he is at the back. Let's say it's Liam. Let's take about 10 years off Liam. We take him to the park. I'll act out Liam. So Liam's there and he goes to the park and he sees the fence all around the park. Let's just say it's Beresford Park, and there's a gate and then there's a little latch at the top. And Liam sees the fence and he says, "Oh, I don't want to play in this park. Oh, it's so restrictive. Oh, I want to be able to go into the woods. I want to go and walk around the pond." Anyway, his mum and dad probably should have hit him at that point, and things would have gone much better. But they don't. They usher him into the park, and then he gets into the park and he sees a little sign on the fence that says, "No dogs allowed." "Oh, I really like dogs. I like to stroke dogs and run around with it. Why can't they let dogs in the park?" "Oh, you're just trying to spoil my fun." But anyway, his parents usher him further in. They still haven't hit him yet, but they get him further in. And then he goes over to the climbing frame, the big climbing frame, and there's all that, the wood chip and bark that's on the floor. "Oh, it's going inside my trainers. It's hurting my feet. I do not like it." And there he is complaining about everything. That's his perspective. Oh, the fence is restrictive. The signs are trying to kill our fun. The bark is irritating. And then what is his parents thinking? "I'm so glad of this fence because it's protecting my children. They can't wander off. He's not going to get lost in the woods. He's not going to end up falling into the pond looking at the swans." They see the sign and they think, "So glad that sign is there. It's guarding him of potentially a dangerous dog that might be on the loose, or even those people who bring their dogs in and don't clear up after them, and they could go blind if he gets bacteria in his eyes from it." And then they go to the bark and they think, "I'm happy for him to play on that climbing frame because if he falls, he's going to bounce because they've got all that padding underneath." And their perspective is, wow, all these things are in place in order that he can be safe, secure, in order he can flourish, he can play, he can enjoy life. Well, is it possible, let me just ask you this, is it possible that God, the one who created us and created the whole universe, created each one of us and created the world, is it possible that his words and his guidance, the fences and the signs and the various things that he's put in place, is it possible that we could have a perspective like an adult that thinks, wow, These are the things that make life flourish. So why is Jesus giving us the Bible? Jesus has given us the Bible to prepare us for the storms of life and prepare us for the storm at the end of life. Because as we heard, yes, if you were here, if you're not, basically, in summary, what Rob was saying is there's a huge storm coming. It's called God's judgment that will sweep everything and everyone away. Apart from those who have built their lives upon Jesus and his words, they will stand secure and stable for all eternity. Thank you so much for listening.